Khorne here, and today I'll be making a tier list about the Total War Warhammer DLCs. I won't be covering any free DLCs, although I will be comparing them to the paid ones. This tier list will be based solely on my personal enjoyment of their implementation in Warhammer 3. I will be ranking them based whether I liked it and consider it a must-get, I didn't really enjoy it all that much, and I regret buying it. When it comes to Warhammer 1 DLC, the must-get DLCs include Call of the Beastmen, Grim and the Grave, and the King and the Warlord DLC. Call of the Beastmen is one of the best DLCs you can get, in my opinion, as you get access to 3 amazing campaigns with the Beastmen. The Beastmen are simply a race I enjoy playing, and having more options is always fun. Grim and the Grave give you some very interesting options with Volkmar and Halman Ghost. Although in the past these lords were not all that interesting, I think that in Warhammer 3 they are some of the best campaigns the game has to offer. King and the Warlord DLC gives you Belegar and Skarsnik. Usually considered the hardest campaigns, I find them to be quite easy in Warhammer 3, and they're actually the best campaigns their respective races have to offer. The DLC I didn't really enjoy but don't regret getting are Realm of the Wood Elves, Warriors of Chaos, and Norska. So I never really enjoyed the Wood Elves. The only Wood Elf campaign I found to be very fun was Drykas, but the rest can be quite boring for me. With the Warriors of Chaos DLC, you get Sigvald, Kolek, and Archeon. These 3 campaigns were never fun for me, even before the Warriors of Chaos rework in Warhammer 3, and they still are not fun. The best and most enjoyable Warrior of Chaos Lord is, in my opinion, Be'lakor, and he is free to play. The only issue is, I do not know which units come with this DLC. Finally, Norska. If I were talking about Warhammer 2, I would say I deeply regret purchasing them. But in Warhammer 3, they are much better than they used to be, although still not a campaign I really enjoy. Now with Warhammer 2, I will start with the race packs. So the Tomb Kings are a must-have, but the Vampire Coast I regret purchasing. These 2 DLCs were the very first I got for Warhammer 2. And while the Tomb Kings offered an amazing experience all while learning the game, the Vampire Coast was the exact opposite and actually kept getting more and more dull until a point where I no longer desire to play them. To this day, I can boot up a Tomb Kings campaign and enjoy it. But whenever I play the Vampire Coast, I just end up abandoning campaigns early and hate them more and more each time. Now as for the Lord packs, the must-have ones are Prophet and the Warlock, Twisted and the Twilight, Warden and the Paunch, Silence and the Fury. Prophet and the Warlock offer 2 amazing campaigns for the Skaven and Lizardmen, as well as some very important units to the Skaven roster. I honestly can't even imagine myself playing Skaven without ever recruiting Rattling Guns. And even though I hate playing the Lizardmen, the Hanuin can be an enjoyable campaign for me. With the Twisted and the Twilight, you get 2 amazing campaigns for the Skaven and the Wood Elves. Strahd is probably my favorite Skaven campaign, as his unique mechanic in the Flesh Laboratory is extremely fun to use and very useful throughout your campaign. The Sisters of Twilight are, although not a campaign I often play, still a decent Wood Elf campaign. Silence and the Fury is one of my favorite DLCs, but truth be told, I never played an Oxyotl campaign. The Lizardmen are, again, not a race I enjoy playing, as they feel like they're quite dull and fairly generic, which is sad considering they are dinosaurs riding dinosaurs. That being said, Thorax's campaign more than makes up for it, as it is one of the most amazing there is in Warhammer. It also brings some amazing units to the Beastmen roster. Warden and the Paunch is a very good DLC, one of the best regardless of contradictory opinions. It provides you with Eltharion and Grom, and these are some of the most unique and enjoyable lords to play in the game. Eltharion with his unique units, and Grom with his cooking mechanic that just enhances the greenskin experience by a massive amount. The DLC I didn't enjoy but don't really regret buying are Queen in the Crown, Shadow and the Blade. So Queen in the Crown is just a mediocre DLC in my opinion. where you just don't get much offered. Alariel is an amazing legendary lord, but I have more enjoyment playing any other high elf campaign, aside from Teclis. Khorne Hellbrown is just not a campaign I ever enjoyed, and I did try quite a few campaigns for her in Warhammer 2 and Warhammer 3. But with the Warhammer 3 Dark Elf rework, her campaign just lost any appeal to me and is quite annoying to play. Shadow and the Blade is not a DLC I enjoy, as Snitch just isn't a Skaven faction I have fun with. It often feels less fun than just playing Lord Skrolk. Malice is also a Dark Elf faction I just find unappealing, as there's nothing to him. His faction mechanic is rather lackluster, and his campaign is not all that different from any other Dark Elf campaign. The only good thing about this DLC, in my opinion, are the units you get in it, and the same could be said for the Queen and the Crown. And the only Lord pack I regret buying in Warhammer 2 was the Hunter and the Beast. I already dislike playing the Lizardman, and Nakai just brings this up by extreme amounts. I tried his campaign multiple times, but I always just end up hating it and quitting before I get past the first few turns. I feel like this is a campaign best suited for people who already enjoy the Lizardman and just want something new for that faction. Marcus Wolfhardt's campaign is quite frustrating to say the very least. You start off in Lustria, which is already a big minus, and you constantly get attacked because of your faction mechanic, and all this with no compensation whatsoever, as the only unique thing he gets are his heroes. I wish I could say this DLC brings you some good units, but most units you get are, well, fairly bad. Now with the Warhammer 3 DLC, things get a little bit weird. The DLCs that are a must get, in my opinion, are Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs and the Champions of Chaos. The Forge of the Chaos Dwarfs because they are one of the best races in the game, in my opinion. And not just in terms of strength, but in terms of enjoyment as well. There are so many things to do with the Chaos Dwarfs, and so many different ways to play their campaign that I will never get tired of playing them. Now, as for the Champions of Chaos DLC, well, it is because of all the units you get. I honestly hate the Champions of Chaos themselves. Each of their campaigns is nothing more than a gimmick. Well, except for Festus, who actually has a better campaign than Kuath. But the reason this DLC is a must-get is because of all the units you get in it. You don't just get these units for the Warriors of Chaos, but the Monogods as well. So indirectly, this DLC brings you so much value that it is simply a must-have. Now, the Ogre Kingdoms I don't really regret buying, as I got them for free, but if you were to ask me if you should get them, I would not recommend it. The Ogres are simply a very boring faction to play and feel like they're half-baked at best. Finally, Shadows of Change is just a terrible DLC in terms of quality, quantity, and price. Gets 3 stupidly strong factions, out of which only Yuan Bo seems well implemented. Mother of Sankhya is rather lackluster and feels half-baked, with a mechanic that is both overpowered and gimmicky. The Changeling seems like he would be fun to play on paper, but most of the time his campaign just ends up being an end-turn simulator with very little interactivity required from the player. I feel like this DLC required more time to get better polish and give actually good race updates rather than what we got. And if you think me wrong on this part, just know that the Changeling can lose all of his cults, all of his armies, and still not get a game over screen. If that doesn't tell you that the DLC is incomplete, I don't know what will. If you enjoyed the video, I'm some 200 subscribers away from getting monetized, so if you could subscribe for future content, it would really help me out. If you have any thoughts on the matter, please do share them in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and until next time.